and pass swiftly attain the state of Vajradhara. So let's do the 4 limitless contemplations. May all beings have happiness and create the causes of happiness. May they all be free from suffering and create the causes of suffering. May they find that noble happiness which can never be tainted by suffering. May they attain universal impartial compassion, free of worldly bias towards friends and enemies. Semjeng damje dewatang dewe jutang din pa jutik, dungal tang chitang trawa jutik, Dungal mepe dewa tampatang minra wajitik nering chaktang nitang trawe tangum chembola ne pajuche. So good evening, everybody. If you could switch on your cameras, please do. So we're going to do the vital necessity of accumulating merit and wisdom, how and why, part 3, which is such an important subject for all of you in your lives. So tonight, after examining how and why we need to accumulate merit, which is completely vital for a wholesome, beneficial, worthwhile life, and follows us totally into the during and into the afterlife, it follows us into the next life, or it allows us to liberate during this or the next life and decide for ourselves what we'll do next. So instead of, once you have that merit and once you acquire the wisdom, you don't have to be catapulted by your karmic imprints. You can choose. And that's what these masters do. They choose where they're going to emanate, what they're going to do, what kind of life they really want. And it's interesting because when Tai Situ Rinpoche used to talk to me, used to say to me, well, why don't you rather have this life or that life? And underneath in my breath, I often thought, as though you have a choice, but you do have a choice. Once you accumulate what you need to accumulate in this life, then you do have a choice. So we'll summarize what we've learned so far for those of you who've missed. But then I want to take accumulation to the next step, okay? And what is the next step? The next step is when your merit integrates with and becomes wisdom. That's the next step. To get merit, in order to get merit, we must have purified at least some obscurations we've created. If we're full of obscurations and full of negative emotions, that's why I said this prayer of Kunta Zangpo that we did is so good to see how to use it. So if we must have purified to get the merit, at least some obscurations we've created. But to have merit, to actually have merit, just let her in, to have merit, okay, the point of the merit is to gain tremendous wisdom. So at the same time, we can't understand wisdom if we don't have the merit to do so. So in order to come to a wise state, you really need merit. In order to gain wisdom, you also need merit. But you can't get merit if you haven't purified all your negativity. So it's really, really amazing because we need purification to accumulate lots of merit. And this gives us the opportunity, when we've got the merit, to unite with our wisdom nature. And if you look at people, you can see why they can't make progress on the spiritual path. Because starting with a quote from Tulku Urgyen Rinpoche's book, his book is called As It Is. I'm sure a lot of you have seen that book. It is part 1. I wasn't so crazy about part 2, but part 1, I really, really enjoyed tremendously. But his book, As It Is such an important title, because if you can see things, as they are, as it is, then you're not perceiving them in the way you perceive them. You're perceiving them as it is, as they are, which is only when you gain wisdom to do it. He recited the following famous quote, which was about one of the foremost ways to attain stability in Dzogchen, which is actually the highest wisdom. Now, this was the quote. It's really something worthwhile to know. Indestructible, very important point. Indestructible, you can't destroy it. Innate wakefulness, you can't destroy it. Indestructible, innate wakefulness depends only upon the practice of gathering the accumulations and purifying the obscurations, and upon the blessings of a realized master. To follow other methods should be known as delusion. I'll read that once more because it's really important. He says, indestructible innate wakefulness depends only upon the practice of gathering the accumulations and purifying the obscurations, and upon the blessings of a realized master. To follow other methods should be known as delusion. It's really important, that. So important. And Marion, for you, it's interesting because when we were doing Kunta Zangpo, not Mimi, I call her Mimi, then it's easy to make the distinction. For you, Marion, it's very, very interesting because we were doing, in the prayer of Kunta Zangpo, it shows you how your negative emotions, if you first see them as wisdoms and then you completely let them go, they actually dissolve into absolute space, which is really, really important, you know, with everything that we do. It's really very important. So I'm going to start tonight with a lovely story called The Echo of the Moonlight on Water. I love the way he writes this guy. It's so cute. In an ancient temple in the mountains of Nepal lived a wise Buddhist monk named Rinpoche. What an original name. Okay. He was known for his deep meditation and his unique ability to see the true core of things. One day, a young man named Arjun, who was searching for truth and enlightenment, visited him. Arjun asked Rinpoche many questions about life, suffering, salvation, and the nature of reality. Rinpoche listened patiently and answered each question with wisdom and compassion. One night, while they were sitting on the shore of a nearby lake, watching the moon reflected on the still water, Arjun asked a question. Master, what is the echo of the moonlight on water? Rinpoche smiled and said, look closely, Arjun. What do you see? I see the moon reflected on water, Arjun replied. Rinpoche nodded. That is true. But do you also see that the moonlight reflected on the water is not the real moon? It is only a reflection, an echo. In the same way, our understanding of the world around us is often only a reflection, an echo of the truth. It's not the complete truth of itself. Arjun thought for a moment and then said, but how can we know the full truth, Master? By learning to see beyond reflections and echoes, Rinpoche replied. By quieting our minds, sharpening our eyes, and opening our hearts, only then can we see the true nature of things, the true light of the moon beyond its reflection. Arjun was silent and thoughtful. He looked at the water and the moonlight dancing on it and realized there was more to see than was visible at first glance. He promised Rinpoche to keep searching, keep meditating, and keep learning to see the true nature of things. Now, when we want to accumulate wisdom, you cannot accumulate wisdom with your intellectual mind. Yes, you can accumulate quite a lot of knowledge, okay? But we are not really interested in knowledge because it's a really important thing to think about. What is he saying about the reflection and the echo? He's saying that everything that you see in front of you, all your difficult situations, all your pain, all your suffering, everything is just a reflection. It's not the real thing. The real thing, if you look at it very deeply, becomes something different. But because we are so enmeshed in our problems, in our tangible, what we call tangible things, we cannot get to that true nature. Now, this is a question we must really debate next week, because it's so important to actually get to your true nature if you want to get through this life and you want to be able to choose where you go. So before we move into the wonderful subject of accumulation of wisdom, the other wing of the bird, let's briefly recap some points of the past two teaching sessions. We spoke about merit through a life dedicated to the service of others. That's a very difficult thing to do when you dedicate to the service of others. And how merit can be changed from thinking of it as good karma to understanding it as a quality of vitality within the energy wind body. Now, this is so important because a lot of people think, let's say I'm generous and I create the causes of having lots of money because I'm generous. No, that's not it. The generosity, when it comes from your absolute, let's say, wisdom, your perfected wisdom mind, when that generosity comes from it, it's something different because it goes beyond the I am giving you something. It goes to something which flows. Now, as soon as you have the merit, the energy flows in your wisdom winds. As soon as the energy flows in your wisdom thing, you've got enthusiasm. You've got energy. You haven't got that awful feeling about life, okay? How you actually feel that merit generates a vitality through you, okay? Without merit, we'll have little energy and motivation for the Dharma and for life in general. So when people don't have that spiritual understanding or can't understand the practices, they can't relate to the practices in any way, they just can't understand what it's doing, it is an indication that they don't have the merit. You know, that aha feeling has got to come from merit. You can't get an aha feeling if you haven't got the merit to understand what you're doing. And it's so interesting because if you look back on your life, it's such an interesting thing to think of how you were and what you were like. I look at my own life, and I'm talking about the years before I was not spiritual, but I always had a mystical interest a little bit in life, even as a child. And I think I told you that when I finished school, my mother said, Melanie, you haven't told me what you want to do with your life. What are you going to study? What are you going to do? I mean, I hated high school. I thought it was all boring, and I thought there was just nothing for me to learn there. I would never want to go back to high school again and learn all those mundane subjects. But I did say to her, which quite surprised me, I want to have a helping profession. She said, oh, that's good. Okay, but you know, you need that accumulation to actually get it. And when I go back in my memory, it's a very interesting thing because I used to ride my bike to Hebrew lessons. They started at 7 o'clock in the morning. Oh, you would have enjoyed it, Ego, riding with me to school. And now I can't ride a bike, okay? But I used to ride to school and get there at 7 o'clock in the morning. And I remember very distinctly that when the Hebrew teacher used to teach us about the festivals and all of that kind of thing, I remember that I used to ask a lot of questions. And one day he clapped me, because in those days you were allowed to clap children. It was probably a better thing, than today. You're not allowed to touch children. Sometimes a clap. But I remember him pointing a finger at me and saying, "You ask too many questions." I just remember this. And that's why I have an affinity for people who communicate and people who ask a lot of questions when you're trying to teach something, because I was always like that. Now, that was obviously the beginning of my journey of waking up. And then it just took one incident, which was the death of my beloved mother-in-law, who was very young, and she just died suddenly. And then that night, I dreamt that she was at the foot of my bed, and I saw her young and beautiful, and that catapulted me into a spiritual search, So when you look back, the accumulation, I'm just giving you my things, and you can all give your own stories. But when you look back, you needed to have accumulated some merit and some wisdom for there to start being a dawning as you come into the next life. You might have to pay a lot of karma, but you find that, okay? And what happens is when people don't have the merit to understand the teachings, you can teach them and explain it to them a million times. Today, I was actually teaching somebody about negative emotions, and it was absolutely beautiful. She's not a Buddhist, but it was absolutely beautiful because she got it. She just got it. She understood the negative emotions and the wisdoms. Now, you can talk that hind leg off a donkey to people and they won't get it, okay? Because you need to have accumulated that merit in order to have that dawning, okay? And also for samsaric life, I'll throw this open in a minute, for your samsaric life too. If you haven't got money, if you've got body dysfunctions, if you've got all these ailments, it's a lack of merit. So what you want to do as quickly as possible is to clear those karmic obscurations and start accumulating merit. But what you want to do you don't want to do, I'm giving to a beggar to accumulate merit, because that's of no value. Or I'm helping this person because I want to accumulate merit. It's got to be something that is a passion in your heart, that you see these people who walk in the street and see a cold person and they'll take off their clothes and give it to them. You see it with little children. They come into the world and immediately their whole thing is to help people. So even when they've got something special, they'll offer it to the little child next to them. It's an absolute natural accumulation of merit that they have. And we spent the whole session last time discussing the mandala offering as a way of accumulating merit. If you missed that session, go back, because it's really an important session on, that is one of the really important non-ro things, the mandala offering, in order for accumulating merit. But more important, what we were talking about was, it's when you surrender your ego clinging and attachment, and you offer everything that you've got, your talents, your possessions, your home, your family, you offer it genuinely for the benefit of all beings, okay? And we talked last time about Rob Priest's Western way of doing the mandala offering. You can get that if any of you missed it, of how to actually get that mandala, how to actually get the Western way, in which he says you offer everything, absolutely everything. So every time you come and sit and meditate or do a prayer, even if you're not doing the formal mandala offering, but you offer absolutely everything that you've got to have. It's really, really important, okay? So you could do it in the Tibetan tradition. How I do it is I do it in the Tibetan tradition with Mount Meru in the middle and the 4 continents. But then when I'm really offering it, I add all the things that I'm personally offering in, in myself. So a mandala is a complete, just very briefly, we did it last time, a complete round environment of wakefulness. Tulku Urgyen Rinpoche said that our whole body was a Buddha mandala, which is really important. Our aggregates, which are your form, your feelings, your perceptions, your habits, and your consciousnesses, all of those that we function on, we think that's what we're made of, but actually become a pure mandala when they purify. So the 100 deities within are the mandala of our pure qualities of our Buddha nature. And we offer this completely, and we let the enlightened activities flow through us in the offering selflessly of who we really are. And this accumulates merit in a natural, spontaneous way, rather than the relative effort of creating causes and conditions that accumulate merit. Oh, and just for this group, not this Sunday morning, but the next Sunday morning, we're going to have a very special morning in the temple at Kensington. And I actually asked Alan if we could do Zoom as well for all of you who are not in Johannesburg. If you're in Johannesburg, then please come to the temple, because it will be a lovely morning. And I'm going to teach the mandala of the 100 peaceful and wrathful deities, and the beautiful artist that Natalie Sushon's got in Nepal has done 2 tanka paintings of the 100 peaceful and wrathful deities, and she's going to do a slideshow of these deities. So I'm going to teach, and she's going to do a slideshow of the 100 deities. So Bernice said she would come onto the Zoom and she would do the slideshow for you on Zoom, those of you that are not in Johannesburg. So that'll be really, really nice. It'll be not this Sunday morning, the next Sunday morning. I think it starts at 10. I'll send you the pamphlet for it. And then it's very nice that Alan says we could do it on Zoom, so that those of you who are away, who really want to see it in the temple. And I'm also going to invite Lama Yeshe Rinpoche, because I want him to come in, because I think he'll really enjoy that. And so it'll be next Sunday. So I'll send you a notice of it so that you can get the link and everything. But actually, all practices accumulate merit. Your Guru Yoga, all your Vajrayana practices, when you become the deity and you dissolve it and you use the mantra, they all accumulate merit. If you have little water bowls on your shrine, okay, and you even offer water, that accumulates merit. You don't offer water to accumulate merit, but you offer it with the 7-branch prayer that you do it, and that also is. So all these things accumulate merit. And we really, really, really need merit for life. We need, as Rob Priest says, the vitality in the energy wind bodies to really go forward and get that merit. So before I go on to the wisdom, does anybody want to comment or ask anything? Please do. Any comments or anything of what I've said about the merit, the accumulation of merit? Maybe some of you that weren't here might want to, because we had a long discussion about it last week. But anyone have anything they want to ask or say? You all okay? I'm sure when you hear me going blah, 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 it must be something that happens in you. Otherwise, it really is blah, 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 blah. You know. Anybody want to say or ask anything? All right, then let's go on. So I just want to say that when you are getting wisdom, I love this thing of Taisitu Rinpoche, because we think we know what karma is. We actually don't know what karma is. And in the case of merit, we are not looking at creating causes to get merit. We are looking at giving and offering and surrendering, and it by the by creates merit as well. But this is what Taisitu said about karma. We are not believers of karma ultimately. We are believers of karma relatively. As long as we perceive everything in a dualistic way, that's you and me separate. This is separate from me. As long as we perceive everything in a dualistic way, then everything is karma, every single little thing. Some things we can call karma and some things not because of their magnitude. But in principle, everything is karma and there's nothing that is not karma. However, many strands of hair you have on your head, each one of them is the result of millions of karmas, he says. For example, it is said in the text very clearly that each of the feathers of a peacock, each strand of hair has perfect alignment of color, and each one of those little hair particles is the result of countless karmas. And trying to find karma, trying to identify karma, he says is described as being more difficult than trying to find the traces of a bird that flew in the sky for millions of years. The bird would have flown one way, then another, then another. So to try to find all those traces is impossible. He says, like that, you have to be omniscient to realize karma. You have to be omniscient to realize karma. So karma is a very complex thing. And it's not just a cause and an effect. Everything is really intertwined. And here we are trying to go a little bit beyond the karma. So when we look at the second wing, wisdom, prajna, it's sometimes called jnana, it's sometimes called yeshi in Tibetan. Okay, if we look at the 6 parameters that we briefly discussed last time, these are the transcendental perfections. Okay, these are the qualities that we develop when we cross to the other shore. It's so important to understand this, because ordinary generosity, ordinary ethical discipline, ordinary morality, ordinary perseverance is not what we're talking about. When we go to the parameters, it's when we go beyond the I doing something to something that flows naturally through you from the beauty of your heart. Okay, and these are the 6 that the bodhisattvas strive for on the path to Buddhahood. Sometimes they talk about 10, but we won't worry about 10 here. Let's leave them for 6. But obviously, putting these 6 parameters to life will accumulate merit. But the final one, so it's generosity, ethical discipline or morality. It's not that pain morality when people say, don't do this and don't do that and don't do the other. The morality is when you cross to the other shore, it's a morality because of believing in the non-harm of other people. So your morality is an ethical discipline that you really want to serve people. That's the second one. Patience. Oh my God, to develop paramita transcendental patience is one of the most difficult things. But when you're in a really difficult situation, to have lots of patience is really a paramita, a transcendental thing. And then perseverance. Perseverance is really important because a lot of us will give up. Okay. And in the beginning, before it becomes a paramita, you've got to put a lot of effort in. But when you actually cross to perseverance, it's very easy. You just transcend everything and you go to the perseverance and you keep on going. No matter what, it's your effort, it's your virya, it's your energy, it's your vitality. Such an amazing thing. And then the next one is meditation, and the last one is prajna, wisdom. Now, the prajna paramita, which is the last one of the wisdom, is what we are really aiming. We accumulate all the merit by letting it flow through us, and then we finally come to the prajna paramita, which is the wisdom. And when we reach it, the wisdom of our Buddha nature starts really, really shining through us in a beautiful, beautiful way. Okay, it's really important to understand that. So, Tulku Urgyen Rinpoche says, even though space is endless, because we're looking now deeply at what is this wisdom that we're supposed to accumulate? What does it mean? What happens if you've got amazing wisdom, if you've really got the paramita of wisdom? And this is what Tulku Urgyen says. Even though space is endless, the number of sentient beings is infinite, the omniscient wisdom of a Buddha, the omniscient wisdom of a Buddha can see all the sentient beings' lifespans, deeds, and attitudes in completeness. They can see absolutely everything. Such omniscience is like knowing every single leaf on every single tree in the entire world. Can you imagine knowing every single leaf in every single tree? Okay, at the same time, while perceiving all these different individual states of mind, a Buddha has no conceptual thoughts. So when you have this omniscient wisdom, you'd never think, oh, this about this one and this about that one. You're actually looking at the truth with omniscient wisdom, and you can see the absolute beauty in each being, but you can also see all their obscurations and what they have. No conceptual thought. It just is what it is. That's the kind of attainment we can reach if we practice. And he says it's called the inconceivable nature, the true wisdom mind. That is what the accumulation of wisdom is. Transcendent wisdom is beyond thought, word, and description. So you can cancel everything I'm saying. I'm just saying it to try and wake you up to really think about it, okay? It's not our intellectual knowledge. It's prajna paramita. Such an important thing. Because if you think you know a lot, then you definitely don't have omniscient wisdom. If you think you only know a little, because as you get to know things, you begin to see how little you know, then you're on the right track, you know. Because sometimes I look at the books that I've got and I think, God, how do you actually do them? So I want to give you on the wisdom that Dzongsa Khyentse taught an amazing thing on prajna, wisdom in India. Now, this is what he said, because it's very interesting. He said, after Buddha attained enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, and of course you all know, Buddha didn't really attain enlightenment. He was already enlightened, but he went through the stages of attaining enlightenment so we could learn how to do it. That was the reason. But when he finished, he said he used 5 adjectives. He said, I have found a place of great peace. Dzongsa made up the 5 adjectives, he said. Great peace, luminosity, clarity, spaciousness, and brilliance. He said something like those adjectives, the Buddha said. He said, but no one will be able to understand what I'm saying. Therefore, I will go alone into the forest and just be. Okay, that's what he said, the Buddha said. But Brahma from the God realm implored him and said, please. And it was his true nature, said Dzongsa, and the human mind can't grasp it because of our conditioning. He says, prajna wisdom can't be defined. Now listen what else he said. He was talking in India, okay, and he talked about common sense. Now, I want you to think about common sense, because I'm sure you often heard your mothers saying, but go and do it. It's common sense. Okay, you hear people saying, what's wrong with you? It's common sense. Now, this is what he said. We think it's wonderful to have common sense, but he says it's actually the sense of sem, the human mind. It's the logic by which we live by. He says, how strange that we taught common sense and it keeps us in the human mind sem. Just think about it. All the common sense and all the logic that you think about, he says, keeps you in the human mind. He said the word for ordinary sentient beings in Tibetan, as opposed to Buddhas, is sem-chen. Chen is the suffix which means which has. So it means which has sem, which means which has the ordinary human mind. That's what your common sense is. So when you say to one of your children, just go do it, it's common sense, you know that you're saying, go into your ordinary mind. You know, don't think out of the box. Go into your ordinary minds, okay? And he speaks of the totality, which is prajna. He says, not a lopsided, prejudiced viewpoint, which is what we use all the time. Prajna means a totality, the full view. That's what we're learning to do. And he goes on to say, because merit and wisdom are together, he goes, merit's not only material, not only relationships, opportunities. Merit is our Buddha nature. He says, merit, why are people getting bumped off tonight? I don't know. Merit, he says, is when you have a real longing and curiosity for the truth. Now ask yourself, do you have a longing and a curiosity for the truth? I do. Do you? Okay.
So Mel, when you were first talking, because I'm a little bit tired tonight, and then I was like using all my common sense and my human mind to take in what you were saying, and then what you've been saying, because earlier on there was a teaching that one of the Rinpoches mentioned about, that was quite final, that if you are distracted or something, then that's it. I can't remember exactly what that was pertaining to. And then now that you've just mentioned this, and it's like, okay, maybe there is still some hope for me.
Of course there is. And if you realize there's hope for all of us, because you've got it, because he says, if you have a longing for the truth, a curiosity about it, then you've got merit. And he says, the ability to understand Dharma is real merit. The ability to communicate with others is merit. If you can't communicate, you don't have the merit. If you communicate well with people, all people, then you have merit. And he says, miscommunication in relationships indicates a lack of merit. So that can't be that you love talking to your Dharma friends, but you hate talking to ordinary common sense human beings. You can't have that. That means you don't have the merit, because the merit is that you have great compassion for stupid people, for clever people, for scientific people, for people who don't understand. He says, the miscommunication in relationships indicates a lack of merit. He says, why, if something is dirty, do we wash it? He said, because we have confidence that basically it's clean. So we wash it. It's got a bit of dirt on, but we know we can clean it. If this bottle is dirty, we know we can put it under the tap and clean it, okay? He said, prajna is clean and is always there, so have confidence that you can reach it, Kati, okay? Have confidence that you can reach it. He says, Merit is the ability to hear things, to understand things. Such an amazing, I think it's an amazing teaching. He says to live with prajna. If you want to live with transcendent wisdom, he says you have to get used to the contradictions. What are the contradictions? It exists. It doesn't exist. It's nothing. It's something. It's like this. It's not like this. Know this, know that. Because when you go into the wisdom mind and you say, hang on, this doesn't really exist. This is empty of a separate self. It's empty of a dependent thing, okay? But then you say, but Melanie, there's something there. There's not nothing. It's not nothingness. There is something there. So it's a contradiction. How can you say that this is empty if there's something here? Because your logical mind says, but I can see something. But your prajna mind says, oh, but this doesn't exist of itself. It's empty of a separate existence. This only exists because there was a person who had brass, who took the thing and put it together, molded it, put it in the oven and baked it. So it's all the interdependent causes come. It doesn't stand by itself. Then you go, what does that mean? I mean, to me, that's something, that's something, that's something. Oh, but there's emptiness. When you start using the wisdom mind, there are going to be contradictions all the time. And you have to learn to take them if you want to have a wisdom mind. Now, this particular teaching I wrote down after I listened to his teaching, where that beautiful man called Jet Li, the master Jet Li was a famous Chinese kung fu master who became a very famous film star in China. And he and Zhongsha were having this debate in this teaching. Jet Li was a Buddhist, and he was asked why he became a Buddhist, because he had tremendous martial arts fame, and he was very famous, and he was in millions of movies. So when he walked around in his land, everybody asked for his autograph and all of that kind of thing. But he was asked, but how come you're a Buddhist? And he said, I thought about the Buddha who was born with everything, good looks, fame, as he was a prince who would be king of the whole land, wealth, food, pomp, every circumstance, everyone would wish for him. Yet he chose to give that all up to find the truth. And he said, I came from poverty, worked many hours a day on my martial arts from your age to try and get somewhere for the sake of my family. I succeeded. He said, I succeeded in my life, okay? And he said, and I got film contracts, fame, money, and I kept thinking. The Buddha gave it all up in his quest. So I began the same quest. Now, what happened to him was so amazing, because he was in Thailand when the tsunami came. Okay, he was in Thailand when that tsunami came. And he had his two daughters. He was on the beach. And when the tsunami came, he was in the water, and his daughter was over there with the carer. And he saw the daughter and the carer being swept out to sea. And it was so harsh, he knew he couldn't do anything. He could never swim to get them. They were too far away. Now, it's so interesting to ask. He was asked about his survival. And do you know what he thought? If you saw your daughter and her carer being swept out to sea in this terrible tsunami, what would you think? you would go demented with your ordinary mind. You would think, what is going to happen? I'm going to lose her. You try and swim, you try and scream, you try and everything. Do you know what he thought at that time? He said, he thought, at death, we are all equal. Whether we've had fame, poverty, good, bad life, we face death as equals. The circumstances at that moment don't matter. Death equalizes us. Now, can you imagine being in the water, in this tsunami, watching your child, your darling little daughter being swept out to sea and thinking that? I mean, you have to really have a real wisdom mind to think that. And I thought a lot about what he said, about our negative situations and what we go through and everything. And I thought, we could never think like that. That is where you actually come to your wisdom mind, because your wisdom mind, really, really, really sees things in a completely different way. Okay? So when you have your wisdom mind, whatever harsh, negative things you're going through, you actually see it in a different light. Now, the good news that I've got for you, the good news is that Zongsa then taught on the good eon, the sutra called the good eon. Okay, so we look at our lives, we look at the wars, we look at everything that's going on, and we can't see that this is a good eon. Okay, but why is it a good eon? He says, because the trauma of this planet, while what we're going through, but that 1002 Buddhas will appear in this time zone, in this kalpa, who will bring all the teachings of awakening. Therefore, even with so much darkness, because of these Buddhas, this is a good eon, a very, very long, it's a long time or no time. He said, the Buddha asked many questions at the beginning of the Sutra of the Good Eon. He said, how can a bodhisattva understand the different perceptions of all the different beings? How can people are bumping off and then coming back, bumping off and coming back? How can a bodhisattva have real compassion and enlightened activities? In the end, he says, it is only the state of the Buddha mind that is enabled to enact all the bodhisattva enlightened activities. So get your Buddha mind, find it, and get confidence in it so that you can do what he's saying. Do you understand me, Pamela? Pammy, with your Snoopy cartoons. Every day she sends me a Snoopy cartoon, and I love it. I laugh and laugh and laugh. Okay. And you know what, Pam? Your awakened mind has got a wonderful sense of humor. So if you can look at the Snoopy cartoons every day, even when you're going through stress and everything else, then you're in your Buddha mind. Because it's so funny when Snoopy, who's an animal, gives his perception of life. And it's so simple. And it's not clouded with all these delusions and all these things. Now, surely, we better meditate before we go on, but surely some people would like to say something, because I've told you a lot of things. I think that Zongsa teaches very well. I really think he teaches very well. He teaches very mundanely, but then he just drops a little pearl. And if you can grab that little pearl, then you look down and you see everything and you see what it is with your wisdom mind, and then you can get through it again. Amazing. Viam, let's hear your philosophy. We haven't seen you for a while. because you missed all of those sessions.
Hello, Mal, everybody. Good to be here.
So
You very much. Hello, Martin.
Martin as well, yeah, he's been away for a
Uh,
while. He's been in
um,
Sahara for a while, yeah.
enjoying the summer. No, you're very much talking about something that I went through, like exactly recently with a friend, actually, when I was away in Durban last week. Um, and at the end, I don't want to necessarily all the details with a friend, but at the end of it, what it came up is like with the wisdom and insight was also a word that came for me together with the wisdom, and I just felt like this person has so much knowledge and intellect and like well spoken and like charismatically talking about everything, but the merit as well. That word is like I said, where's the merit and the wisdom? It's like empty. Use all this talk and deluding yourself that you think there's these things, and it just makes me very thankful for having found this path, because I feel like my spiritual path produces enough for me to have a sense of I know where I've been, I know where I'm going, and a confidence in the path, and a confidence in what the teachers teach. Um, I'm not saying this guy is he's in the Hare Krishna. I'm not saying it doesn't, but maybe it doesn't apply any of it, and it's just reading and it's head knowledge and that type of stuff. But at the end of the day, it's not just about this person, but it's just personally for me, it was something that came up. Those exact words: wisdom, merit, and also insight. Being able to have insight into your own life, to be able to have a objective view of where I really am, and to be honest with myself of like where I am actually spiritually. Am I fooling myself? Am I actually um, are there actually signs on my path, that tell me I'm heading in the right direction? Is there actually any fruits? That's also a word that comes up for me. Is there actually any fruits on my spiritual path? Well, what am I doing actually? It's just like some sort of a hobby that keeping myself busy with. Um, to make myself feel better about whatever, or is actually something going on, And if I can be honest with myself about that and actually see that, yes, there is, maybe there's teachers entering my life that's opening doors for me, there's people, things that happened without my uh, having to really do anything, that's that for me is the merit, things that kind of manifest in my life that makes it
Absolutely.
easier for me to go forward,
Absolutely. And you know what? You know when you know people are wise, because probably you can see I'm not wise because I've got too many words. Okay. But when people are wise, when they've really got that wisdom, if you looked at Akon Rinpoche, he never gave you more than 5 words at a time, right, Kathy? Never, just give you, but that would hit the essence of it. Now, very often when people are very intellectual and it's blah, 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 blah to do things, it's so amazing because it's not only the talking, but you really need to feel a connection with people. When you feel the wisdom mind, it's that pure state that is selfless, that is there for other people, but knows also when to limit oneself. It's like really, really important. So what you're saying is vital. It really is, because looking at people, you've got to feel their nature, because the nature is magnetizing. It magnetizes people. It's amazing. Did you want to say something, Ev?
Yeah, this is very interesting for me, because I think that, I don't know if it's, I mean, I speak for myself, but I think that there's been various moments in my life, grantedly not many, where I have really experienced, I've really experienced like this. I think one moment was actually when my husband died. When I found the moment that I found out that he was dead, and there was a lot of a shock. And I remember using the words, "It's inconceivable." But there was also a moment post that where it's like I suddenly moved into this bigness of like a bird's eye sense
Amazing.
of myself, of everyone, of him, of just this huge, I don't know, I can't even explain, it's quite difficult. I haven't thought about this for years actually, but there's almost like deep understanding or compassion or something, but unfortunately it didn't stay. It was the moment. And there's been other periods in my life, and one that you may remember is that when I was working at Pod at the farm, and there was a moment also when I had that very difficult event to do, and we had a huge storm coming in, and I had all these hundreds of people arriving, and then there was also that moment where it and actually that was very powerful because it carried me through that period of all the disaster. But again, sadly, it didn't stay. And that's interesting for me, that we can taste it, we can have glimpses, we can have moments of it, but yet our human mind takes over. Yeah.
No, but I'm so pleased you brought this up, because I've watched a lot of people that, you know, that have had tragic bereavements. Avril had a terrible thing. Her husband went out and got killed on a motorbike, and that was that, you know, and just suddenly out of the blue, you know, and I've had counseled a lot of people that have suddenly had a disaster, you know, with spouses, with children, with all kinds of things. And it's so interesting because most will give an account of where there was a moment, because if you watch people, sometimes the policeman comes to the door and knocks on the door and then tells the woman, you know, this terrible news. And the next thing is she's saying, "Can I make you a cup of tea?" in this very calm voice. It's before the the human mind, hits in again, okay? It's before that. So in a moment of tragedy, and I counseled all the people who lost people on that Helderberg disaster. I had a whole group of them that actually came to me. And it was so interesting how when they all got the news, you know, people had different responses. But a lot of people speak about that moment when you actually have a deep understanding of what's happened. Now, that is the wisdom mind, okay? And the wisdom mind is always operating through you. But this is Tulku Urchin's plea with people. He says, if you can have a little glimpse and then another little glimpse, and then another little glimpse, and then another little glimpse. When you have those glimpses, that's how it starts. Because think of it this way, your whole conditioning for lifetime after lifetime after lifetime is your normal human conditioning, okay? How you must be. You know, your parents, you go out to school and win, or go and do this. They tell you all these things, and you've had all these conditioning. But there's always been the wisdom mind through that. And suddenly you get a glimpse of the wisdom mind. So what Tulku Urchin says is small glimpses regularly. So when you don't have them, you know, please, we don't have a shock every day, you know, thank goodness. But I mean, if you really every day just sit and go back to that moment when you actually had a strange calmness about what was happening to you, even if it lasted for 30 seconds. That moment of the calmness is the part of you that knows, that has omniscience, that understands fully for that moment why you are going through this. It's such an amazing thing. You see, what happens is with a lot of times like that, the doctors come, and then after that, the person gets hysterical, then they're given pills. And you can't imagine how many people I've had who are on heavy medication after they have a tragedy or something. And then I say to them, I can't work with you until you start going off, because the hysteria and the pain and the suffering and the trauma is very important for you to look at, because with the wisdom mind, that trauma is not anything. When I do my prayers about all the people that have died in these wars and these terrorist things and these floods and everything, I always ask, may they understand the temporary, transient nature of the trauma, and may they go through it and wake up to their wisdom mind. So what I'm really saying, I'm really glad you brought that up, because it's such an important thing in the scheme of things. We have many incidents in our life to wake us up, to really, really get us to start realizing that this is a temporary, transient, impermanent little drama that I'm going through for the last who knows how many years, okay? I'm going through this little drama, but it's nothing. I've been through millions of dramas, thousands of dramas, thousands of roles, thousands of different identities. And the only identity that remains is that nature, the wisdom mind. That's why we have to accumulate the wisdom. So if we touch it in a moment, then we've got to touch it again, and we've got to touch it again. And in your sleep state, we must go back to doing a little more in the sleep state. In your sleep state, you have an amazing opportunity, open portal to unity, to see your wisdom mind again. And to have
I think one of the things that I'm most interested in, and I mean, is that the experience that I mentioned earlier, not when I was encountering a very difficult set of circumstances that I needed to operate in, and also came into the space of being, came into this nature of mind, or just the sense, and that the flow, the ease in which difficult situations moved, it was wonderful. I mean, I think that, I don't know if you remember that, it was right at the beginning, there was a period, and that weekend and difficult circumstances literally dissolved. And the part that I find so difficult, and I'm just trying to apply this in a sense to myself, is that it was beautiful to live, to be there. And so if it is so positive, then, I mean, why is it so hard to stay? Why do we have to fight so hard to be there? I know there's the conditioning and the habit momentums of our habitual tendencies and things, but one would think that it is, in my experience, obviously, was a very positive experience, and yet I still went back into my mind. And
I fully understand. And the thing is, it is the conditioning, but it's also because when you look at things through your wisdom eyes, they call these eyes the physical eyes. When you do the highest practices, then it's very interesting, because when you do the highest practice in Dzogchen, these eyes become the wisdom eyes. And even though they are physical eyes, what happens in you is that all the energy comes up and goes through the eyes, so that what you are able to see is actually the reality, not a fantasy. The things that you see after death, you train yourself to see through your eyes so that you can understand how things really are. But remember, I'm coming to give you the story, but maybe not tonight. Remember a very important thing. When everybody around you sees things in a particular way, it's really difficult to take yourself out of that situation and raise yourself to the helicopter level to see what your life is about. Now, do you understand that wisdom mind, that Buddha nature, that awakened, what he called the enlightened wakefulness, is always there? It's actually there in your heart. And it's always watching your whole life. And if you stop for a minute, because you know how our minds go if we've got a problem. If you're going through a problem, what happens is you put the problem out, and then you go, right, I'm going to really meditate now and see what I can do. And then 1 second later, your mind is in there working it out again, analyzing it, fixing it, working it out. But all along, that awakened nature was watching, ready to be actually put through you. And if you just stop, as Tulku Urgent says, and rest in your natural state, you will allow it to come through you. Now, what Kunta Zangpo was saying in the prayer, and I'm sorry that a few of you, not all of you were there, what Kunta Zangpo, who is the primordial Buddha nature, is saying is that if you have a momentum of anger, a momentum of fear, a momentum of desiring things and never being satisfied, a momentum of pride, I'm better than other people, a momentum of jealousy, I can't stand you to be with anyone else, or whatever the case is. If you've got those momentums, you don't know that you're living in a realm. You don't know that you're seeing your whole life through that negative emotion. So what he's saying, Kunta Zangpo, is sit in your natural state. That's your unnatural state. Sit in your natural state and let it come up without your interference. And when you see you interfering, sit in your natural state and let it all come up and watch, because it comes out of the essence. And it really is pure, but we can't see it. It's really wisdom, but we see the poison. And then it goes back into the essence. So if you don't interfere, that's your tip. If you don't interfere with it with your human mind, it will resolve itself. That's the natural, wise way, but we can't do it. So, Av, that is what the training is about. Okay, it's the training. You train again, and then you train again, and then you train again, and then you train again. And then one day you're in that situation, and there you are. Bob's your uncle. You see it. You see it as it really is. What are we made of? That's what I want to do with this 100 deity. I want to show us it's us, the 100 deity mandala in our heart that we see after death is you. Every quality is in you. You just have to tap it, and there it is. But we don't have the trust and the confidence. Let's do a little meditation, everybody. Just switch off your, put your mute button on, so that we can't hear you. So that's a lot to absorb and digest. Don't absorb and digest it. Just breathe in, because what you're breathing in is spacious, but it's not just ordinary space. It's space with awareness. When you understand, space with awareness, with clarity, with luminousness, with openness, with possibility, with spaciousness, but not just the plain element of space. Space with its real nature of the Dharma Dhatu. Openness, plenty of space, clarity. Clarity is what we lack. Luminosity, compassion. That's ours to tap into any second of the day. So if you breathe that in, especially when you're in a pickle, especially when you're making a big change, especially when your life isn't going according to your plan, especially when you're hurt, especially when you're jealous, especially when you're angry, disappointed, full of grudges, can't understand. Those are the moments. Instead of rubbing your hands together and getting involved in the poison and working out how to get revenge, how to get security, how to be safe, how to punish the person you're jealous of, how to strangle somebody, how to put all your garbage into someone, how to have impatience. Instead of that, we just sit in our natural state. Well, what is our natural state? Natural state is dharmata, open, blue in color, spacious, clarity, absolute possibility. No specifics, just clear color, beautiful colors, rainbow-like. That is ours, at our disposal. Any minute, second, any stage fright moment, it is ours. Breathe it in and allow all that you are holding on to, and revenge and jealousy and pain and suffering and not knowing, uncertainty, let it all go back into this blue inheritance that we have of dharmata. And watch as it just dissolves into its natural state. And you breathe it in. And a calmness comes over you no matter how difficult the situation is. And at that moment, you know, you don't think, you know, it's okay. I will get through this. There is something for me to find and something for me to learn. It's that aha moment. Just like Jet Li in the ocean. By the way, his child was saved in the end. Still, imagine your worst nightmare coming true. I once met a girl at the shops who came running up to me and said, Melanie, I have to tell you my experience. She said, because I'm so glad I came to your groups. They were in their house and a fire started. And before they could do anything, the whole house had caught alight, and her husband screamed, go and get our passports and our documents. Just get that and get out of the house. And so they both ran out of the house, and the whole house burned down before the fire engine men came and put out whatever was left. And she said, Melanie, I watched all my possessions of my whole life burning to absolute shreds. She said, everything, my photographs, my life, my letters, everything that I was. And she said, Melanie, I'm so glad I came to your groups, because she said, I had a strange sense of okayness. She said, my husband was in an absolute panic and I felt okay. I just watched my whole life dissolve in front of me and it was okay. And I wanted to tell you this. She came running up to me at the shops. So it's that we're really, really looking for. And it's that we have the potential to obtain very easily. It's at our disposal. It's the accumulation of the wisdom mind. It didn't really ever accumulate it. It was always there. The merit gives you the power to recognize, re-know it. So that story, I don't know why it came to my mind now. I just remembered and I thought, oh, well, I must have taught something to someone over the years that helped them somewhere, because it's not that easy when you see your whole house going up in flames, your whole life going up in flames. But it's interesting that she found that wisdom mind, when that happened. So it's a lot to think about, everybody. It's a lot to think about. And what we're going to do, well, next week we can do discussion. And I love you to bring up all your own situations, because I think it's really, really important that you bring up your own situations and that you apply the Dharma to them. That's what these groups are about. It's not for me to splab. You can read up a lot of the things that I read up, but it's really important for you to understand that. So let's dedicate to all sentient beings, and then I'll stay if anybody wants to ask anything. But I'm thinking of all the people. I watched the soldier in Ukraine who was really in dire straits, and they sent a drone. They managed to pick him up. He had injuries and everything. So I'm dedicating for all those beings, whatever they're going through. This is our way of clearing the obscurations, the karmic imprints, and everything that we've got. So may all beings be able to accept what they are going through and realize that that is what they are able to tolerate. And if they find that wisdom mind, we really pray that they do. And if there's any merit from the talking we've been doing tonight, through this merit, may all beings attain omniscience, may all obscurations fall away from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. And from the ocean of samsara, may all beings be freed. Sonam diye tamche zipane, topne nepe dranam pamshene, jeganachi bala tropaye, sipe sole, doa dro warsho.